All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, really. Good evening, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I would like to thank Emily. She is the inspiration for this video, who asked me to review this particular article. Who is this coming out of? This isn't coming out of MSN. This is coming out of the Center Square, if I got it right, written by Orfrey Devungai. I'm sorry, I can just butcher names. I'm terrible at it. Anyway, a great article talking about the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy, and something that I want to share here with. I guess I should probably screen share this with you. That would make it better. Of our current situation. It says this. Should I go back and read a little bit further back? Let me read just a little bit further back to this one. It says, the balancing point in this whole game, when the desire to invest runs ahead of the desire to save, borrowers compete for scarce funds and the rate is bid up. When saving piles up faster than anyone wants to borrow. Oh, gee whiz, I'm terrible at reading. Okay, when saving piles up faster than anyone wants to borrow it, the rate of return on savings falls until someone is tempted to spend. The rate that clears that market when the economy is running normally, full employment, stable inflation, is the neutral rate, or R star. You can't observe it directly. You can only estimate it. But it's the gravity that pulls every other rate, mortgages, car loans, corporate debt, toward it over time. Now, here's the thing about this is I've been trying to share the idea of watching the neutral rate for quite some time. And all of a sudden, it's now coming to people's attention through articles such as the one that you're reading here. Now, let me continue on with this. This is going to get really telling here in just a second. Let me get back into that article again here real quick. So now, if we cruise down a little ways, we get into this spot right here where it says this. It says the Cleveland Fed's latest models estimate that the real neutral rate, right? This is the natural rate of interest, right? The neutral rate has climbed from 0.8% in 2021 to roughly 1.5% today. And that its nominal counterpart, the actual dollar rate, that's neither hot nor cold, now sits near 3.7. Now, this is going to be very telling, right? Look at where the Fed rate is, 3.5 to 3.7. In other words, by this estimate, the Fed's rate is now sitting right around neutral. Now, this is exactly what it is that I've been trying to share with the people for quite some time, that the Federal Reserve is sitting near neutral. It goes on to say this. It isn't the heavy break it was a year ago. That's the reason a Fed rate cut is not warranted, and three officials wanted to go the other way. If you are barely pressing the brake and inflation is still above 3%, a rate cut means pressing the gas, which could cause the economy to overheat. Now, this paragraph right here that I just read is very telling of the situation we now face. And what it is saying is that the inflation and the inflation expectation, and it refers to it back here further in the article, has pushed the neutral rate higher. By pushing the neutral interest rate higher, it has now made the Federal Reserve in their position, right, now accommodating, not necessarily accommodating, but sitting at neutral as that neutral interest rate has risen. This is giving the reason for the idea of now, what? Rates. This is now giving the idea of raising rates. Inflation expectation, raising the neutral interest rate, making the economy less restricted, and now the Federal Reserve has to raise rates. This is what I've been describing for years now. Now, here is what I really want to share with you guys is exactly the time that this video, look at that, isn't that a great face of me? Adrian. Okay. If you listen to what I say here for the next few seconds, this is literally August. What did I do this? August of 2023. This thing was almost 3 years ago to the day. Listen to this. And we think about the Federal Reserve raising interest rates well above the neutral interest rate. That's little gap between the two is what's restricting the economy. Now, as time goes on and the interest rates are elevated, the natural or neutral. Okay, this is where I'm getting at, right? As time goes on and the neutral interest rate begins to rise, neutral interest rate begins to rise, right? It starts to follow the expectations that are out there for the future, right? So when a lot of people are looking out there thinking, hey, inflation's going to be sticky, it's sticking around forever, it's never going to come down, and they start demanding a higher return on their investments, on the risk that they are taking, this in turn starts bleeding into the rest of the economy that is out there, including the natural interest rates, which then begins to rise. Now, when we think about this occurring, this is where it gets kind of complicated. If the Federal Reserve is well above the neutral interest rate and the neutral interest rates begins to rise, that means the effective fund rate, right, or at least the impact that it has on the economy begins to diminish. Boom, it begins to diminish, right? Just like what it is that is happening right now for the same reasons that I had described 3 years ago, practically to the day. Practically to the day. Right here, let's finish. I can't even remember what I continued on to say. Right? As the neutral interest rate is now creeping up on it. Now, if this continues, then eventually the neutral interest rate will find its level, where it's just like neither, this is the natural interest rate that the economy is finding. The Federal Reserve would then have to move their Fed funds rate to that natural interest rate in order to neither be restricting nor accommodating the economy. But nobody knows exactly where the neutral interest rate is or where it's going to land, right? It's going to be hopefully somewhere in between there, is what the idea behind it is. So this is another reason why you're finding the Federal Reserve stalling out on their Fed funds rate, is because they want to see where that natural interest rate ends up landing. Boom, right? Who could have possibly, oops, where am I at here? Right? Could have possibly predicted what it was that the Federal Reserve was going to do 3 years ago, based on the idea that the inflation that they were experiencing at the time was running out of control. Nobody knew it was up. Go read the articles from 3 years ago. Not a single person was talking that. I was literally the only one talking what it was that I put out in that video. There's a link down in the description. I made that video 3 years ago, practically to the day. It was like August 23rd, right? Like 20 days from making that, on the day 3 years ago. And so when I think about how it is that most people are viewing the economy, if they don't see it the way that through the CTT, I can't use the term anymore. I think the algorithm has keyed in on the term and is then flagging the videos when I say it outright. I don't care if you guys say it in the comments, but I can't use it anymore. So I'm just going to say CTT, or the theory, or the policy, but I can't speak about certain things out there anymore because I just feel that the YouTube algorithm just isn't going to share it. Because think about how accurate that video is. I mean, not that I trust the source of the news article, but the facts that are in there, right? We have a neutral interest rate that has risen. It describes that. This is something exactly what it was that I had described 3 years ago would take place. It takes time for it to occur. Here it now has occurred. We have an easing economic condition based on the elevated inflation expectation that was running persistently within the economy. And I kept saying, dude, this is what they are trying to do on purpose. Right? They may even get to a point. I'll go find the video where I talked about where they may even have a need to raise interest rates. That was not a surprise to me when I saw that the 3 Fed officials were looking to do that. It was like, yeah, no kidding. You guys are sitting in a neutral position. You got inflation expectations running rampant. What else are you going to do? You know what else is funny about this article is that if you go and you read through it even deeper, you're going to find that the neo-Fisherism is in it as well. But you know what? That's that's too deep of a discussion for YouTube. That's what you're going to find over at the UE University, because that's what we're going to talk about next. That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, is the real depth of that article, which is to be able to see how the neo-Fisherism is playing out within it. This right here, this is old news. This is 3 years old. I don't know how many people recognize it. They look at it and they go like, oh my God, can you believe what the Federal Reserve? And this is like, I made this video 3 years ago describing exactly this. Like, say, hey, watch for this outcome. This very well could be the possibilities coming. I put the video out 3 years ago and then witnessed it happen over the next 3 years, and very few people were keyed in on it. I mean, not saying very few, The viewers of this channel saw it. The ones who have been here for a very long time, they see it. They see it plain as day. But others who read this article and took it in as first, like this is the first discovery information that they got, do you realize, look, I made a video 3 years ago talking about this thing. If you are just now cluing in on it, you're 3 years late. At least, I mean, think about it. I made the video 3 years ago. I had to develop the idea and understanding before I made the video, you know? And again, I'm not trying to brag myself up as being some sort of super genius. The information is right there. Go take it for yourself and do whatever you need to with it. Right. I'm sharing that with you guys. It's right there. I'm trying to share what it is that I'm finding. And this is like, when it gets so obvious to me when I read these articles and people like have a tendency to believe that this is like first time discovery information that's being released. And I'm thinking it's not, right? It's really not. This is stuff that the Federal Reserve has been talking about for decades. And it's not easy to understand their language. That's why I'm here, right? To help break that stuff down, because I read thousands of these documents. I can read through these things and then interpret it and then speak about it in a way that then I can share with people what it is that's happening out here 3 years before it takes place. Yeah. Getting high and staying high is a 9-minute video that I put out 3 years ago. So the Federal Reserve has no intentions on coming down. Do not expect that. There is nothing in the cards that says that. I had zero belief of an interest rate cut. And now it's like firsthand, it's like, man, people are just blown away. Man, what are we going to do? Well, if you don't understand neo-Fisherism, you're going to have a hell of an experience, because you better get a crash course in it. You better get a crash course in what that means, how it operates, what it means for the Federal Reserve and your, portfolio, whatever it is you got going on, your business or however. Yeah. I think it's funny how people don't necessarily, like, the people who do give me credit, which is really awesome, because I give them a lot of respect and stuff, the people who do. And it's amazing on how they come to me and they're like, I've got economics degrees, and they go on and they talk about all the stuff that they like have as far as an understanding of economics. And they say that I come to them with such a level of understanding and talking points and like sharing of ideas on such a level, it just blows their mind. Like, how the hell was I able to do this? And I think it's awesome, because really all I was really curious about the Federal Reserve and how they operated. I was really upset, really, is what got me interested in it. But, for the most part, I was very curious in it. And as I started to study the economy and as I started to study the monetary policy, underlying economic forces, propagandized information, I'm like, this is this isn't what people think it is. Right? So I make that video, getting high and staying high. I think people clicked on that video just because of the title. Yeah. And they had no idea on how profound that information was really going to be. They were all anticipating, wondering, wishing, begging, hoping, praying for when the Federal Reserve was going to cut rates. And I'm like, do not even consider that. Do not think that. If you want to think anything, think like an asset holder and look at the real interest rates falling. That's going to ease economic conditions. That's how you need to look at this. And here it is. It's totally obvious to me now. Right? Like, it was obvious to me 3 years ago. I was still a little bit suspicious at the time, but I was pretty well confirmed in my belief system that the Federal Reserve was going to hold the interest rates elevated and the inflation expectation was going to rise. It was going to lower the neutral interest rate. And the reason why I keep saying it over and over again is because I want other people to then internalize it in the same fashion so that they can understand how it is that they position themselves well too. Because I don't know how many times I've repeated those words just to see it happen. Like, I didn't make it happen. That's what's occurring right now. And as people get sick and tired of hearing it, other people are going, dude, I'm getting it now. I'm starting to understand how it is that you were able to do this time and time and time and time again. And to me, it's not like I'm not making accurate predictions. I'm just not falling for the mainstream media narrative. So I don't have to be like, well, they said this and they said that, and this is what it's going to be. I mean, my view is just like it's like looking outside and saying, well, I can see some clouds out there. It's probably going to rain here in a little bit. People are like, oh my God, you're a genius. It's just like it's not really, it's not really like that. It's like literally, it's like being able to look out there and seeing the weather, you know what it's gonna do. Yeah. I mean, you can't predict all the weather, but you can like say, I think it's probably gonna rain here a little bit because it's like pretty dark over there and it's coming our way. Right? Other people were like, nah, the news says it's not gonna happen. It was just like, I don't care what the news says, the news is crap anyway. Everybody knows it, everybody says it, but everybody still falls for it. It's funny as shit. Finally managed to join a live call. I have a question. Okay, cool. Love it. I had perfect timing for a question. We're 16 minutes into my babble, right? Is CCT the only related to what the Fed says, and can it relate to anyone like the president or that? Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to get to your question here in an expensive. I'll get to it in a second here. Let me just answer this one. Or even Besson saying there is going to be U.S. assets. Okay, I would say that yes. Now, I look at the CTT in the theory of policy, right? Of a particular, you got two policies. You got fiscal policy and monetary policy. I'm focused on monetary policy, but I'm not saying that they don't use credible threat theory in order to conduct their fiscal policies. But I don't pay attention to that because it's more of it has less to do with what it is that I'm focused on. So monetary policy is definitely using it, and there's definite examples of it that I have shared throughout, time, and how they've actually used the government in conjunction with this. And now this is part of like the ploy, right? It, it's a guidance of expectation management, right? So they got to do that through particular ways. Like here, for example, if you want to lower the inflation expectation, let me give you a really good example of how the government can do this. The government can lower inflation expectation by the president coming out saying, we got the best jobs in history. There's no inflation. Germany is doing the right thing by going into negative rates. Give me some of that. The Fed knows they're doing wrong. There's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money. There's no inflation. Inflation expectations fall, real interest rates rise. So definitely a credible threat delivered by the administration in order to lower the inflation expectations at the time, which was actually restricting the economy and inevitably forcing it into a recessionary pressure that they knew was going to be coming anyway. Like they knew this was coming, but if you let it happen, you can't deal with it. If you force the collapse, now you got a way that you can deal with it. So all this, yes, I can totally fall into the conspiracy, credible threat theory, being well within the belief system of politics. Like I could totally fall into that, but I don't because I follow monetary policy specifically, and I avoid politics with almost like a hatred because it clouds the view. It obstructs and obscures and makes it difficult and practically impossible to then follow monetary policy. There's no way in the world I would have been able to make that video getting high and staying high had I been listening to it's Biden's fault. Wouldn't have happened. Right. But I didn't listen to that. In fact, I didn't listen to a single thing Biden had to say. Not one. I felt like I was actually proud of myself for being able to manage to get through his entire administration and not listen to a single word the dude said. Right? There was a couple of jokes and memes and little clips that crossed, but I never sat down and listened to anything the man had to say. There was nothing there that I found that was important. Now, I would have to say that at least I give Trump the credit to listen to him. I didn't even give Biden that. All right. So that should give you the level of like belief system that I have within politics. It's not there. It just doesn't exist. Those people are a joke. If they were interested in you and me and the protection of our individual freedoms and rights, and they followed within the confines of the Constitution, I would have a whole different thing. Right? It would be a whole different belief system, but that's not the way it works. And so everybody wants me to pretend that it does. I'm not going to. I mean, I got it, right? Go ahead, vote, go make your votes. It's like good times. I mean, I'll stick local. Right? You want me to vote? I'll vote locally. But vote for president. Yeah, go pick your lesser of two evils. I mean, it's not fun for me. Did I get the question? Did I get Expensive's question? Hold on, where was that? I just kind of went off there a little bit. I didn't mean to. I'm trying to keep myself focused more to the topic at hand that we are addressing. And I lost that. Did you guys go way up there? Where is it? Is it back there always? Jay Prideaux, all-nighter. Did he bail out? There it is. Okay. I love that this channel covers how to best deal with the current system. But Simon, what are your thoughts on the trading game and increasing standard of living on the average Joe by wealth by trading? So everybody's going to have to take the position for themselves, like whether or not you're going to do it through a capitalistic mindset or you're going to be doing it through property ownership or business deployment, like whatever it is that you decide to do with your existence is really a personal game that is up to you, and is so difficult to say what is and what isn't the right thing. People tell me you don't give any concrete examples. And it's just like, I'm not sure what that means. Like concrete examples is something that a wage earner would ask. The asset holder's listening to what I have to say and going, interesting. He called out the lowering of real interest rates because of the rising R-star environment 3 years ago. Wow, this guy has something to say. I'm going to continue to listen. That is what the asset holders are doing. Right? And so when I think about what it is that you should be doing, absolutely, man. Are you into trading? Dude, let's talk, man. I want to learn more about the wheel strategy. You know anything about options? You know how to do option trades and, studying up on that, because I've been really curious about that. Justin, I don't know if he's in here. He's been curious about it too. So there's already a group of people who are very interested in trading, and we talk about that, but it's generally going to happen over at the University, over at the school community, because this channel is about talking about economics and not trading. And I'm not a day trader. I'm not a stock trader. I'm not an investor like that. I'm an individual dude, wage earner, who's trying to figure out how to position themselves to make the most out of this. Now, I understand the difference in thoughts and languages and stuff like that. But again, how it is that I position myself and how it is you position yourself is going to be two different things. I got a lot going on here. All right. So yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about the trades. Have you ever heard of modern economists such as Peter Schiff? Absolutely. I've interviewed Peter Schiff, Todd. You should go back and look at my video. I put out thousands of videos, but I did a series of videos where I was interviewing people, and Peter Schiff was one of them. He gave me one of the greatest interviews I've ever done. Dude, it was super cool, right? Considering he's, like it's Peter Schiff, right? He's got a lot of attitude. But he came on my channel and gave me the best interview, and I was so happy for it. It was so cool. So yeah, you should definitely check out the interview I did with Peter Schiff. I've been on stage with all those guys. I don't know if you know this, Todd, but I went to the Rebel Capitalist as a speaker, right? Back in, what was it, 2021? Is that when we went up there all night? I can't really remember, when we went to Houston, right? So I got to go on stage. I got to speak in front of 850 people, right? All these millionaires, all these people, all these grand people up on stage, the same stage and the same audience on the same day as Ron Paul, right? That was really cool, man, to be able to experience that. So, dude, like I'm not this run of the mill, man. I don't know what's going on here, but this is a different level. Says that MMT cannot possibly work in long term because it doesn't have sound money. MMT is probably the inevitable outcome for our economy, and he's absolutely right. It will not work long term, but neither does the gold standard. All right. So it's more about understanding what it is that's happening within the cycles and not one that fixes it, because it's not a fix to the cycle. You have to understand that if we were on a gold system, we would be in broke and poverty and misery and depressed unless, right, we managed to get our stuff together to the point that we lowered our standard of living and able to compete against everybody else who sleeps on the ground, which is going to be very difficult. And now the main argument there is called Cantillon effect. And it's something that I love to talk about. There's 3 chapters to the Cantillon essay, chapter 6, 7, and 8 in part 2. Increase and decrease of money to the state. So good. Talks all about that stuff. He's an anti-Bitcoin because he is not money. They claim that is money. It has no inherent value, only a price. Yeah, I'm somewhat in agreement with that. But I own Bitcoin. I am like, Bitcoin's like the biggest position that I have, which is kind of weird to think because I didn't even really want it to be. Like, well, I guess that's not true. The real estate's probably like the house is probably the biggest position, but the Bitcoin is like, out of all the rest of the assets, dominates all the rest of my portfolio. And I didn't even want it to. Like, I wanted it to be silver or something else, but it ended up being Bitcoin just because of how much it had gone up. I had purchased, I was buying like, dollar cost averaging into it for a long time. I have no idea what my average is. A bunch of it was given to me. So I'm sitting in a position in which that Bitcoin has just absolutely just done so well for me. And I tell you what, it gives me the ability to sleep at night. You know that? Like, it's just like when you have almost no consideration for Bitcoin whatsoever, and you have a half a Bitcoin, and you come off of, a lifetime of being broke, and you finally got like, something like that going on. It's just like, yeah, I like Bitcoin just fine. Right. But at the end of the day, what is better? Gold. Here, you know how you can easily determine which one's going to be better? It's because you can do it this way. Just take your imagination for just a second and remove all the Bitcoin from existence. Boom, gone, right? All the Bitcoin has disappeared. There's none left. What happens to the world? Now, there's going to be some disruption, some change, especially now when it's starting to get a little deeper into the financing world and, stuff like that. So there's going to be some change. But for the most part, nothing really happens. All right. Like some stuff, but not much. You remove gold, and now you got some major disruptions taking place. It's going to be a whole different experience. It's not going to be anything like we have right now. So Bitcoin, kind of important, like, especially how intertwined it's gotten and as it's getting more important, right? But gold is absolutely vital. Without it, we die, and that's not a joke. Like, precious metals are absolutely vital to our existence, and without them, we die. We die in our existence, right? It might be a different existence, but it ain't going to be this one. Well, no Bitcoin? Okay, a little different. Right? So Bitcoin, not nearly as important. So I would have to agree on the level that if you're going to put an importance on one over the other, then definitely gold is far more important than Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, I can only say, man, look, what happens. And I didn't mean for it to be, but that is definitely what is killing it inside of my portfolio right now. And knowing how low Bitcoin has been for as long as it's been, if it dives down from here, I'm going to get excited about that. You know that? Like, I get excited. It'll be like, oh, damn, I don't know, man. I'm going to get back into that stuff right there. Right? Look how low it's at. You go to stuff that's unloved, unvalued, unappreciated. That's what you go to. Right? You don't go to stuff that's noticed. You don't go to stuff that's appreciated. You don't go to stuff that's like, got everybody's attention. You go to stuff that's being used, vital commodities like silver when it was unloved, unappreciated. That's when you move into them. At this point, I would pick up silver if I, happened to be at the right moment, at the right time. It was a good price. Absolutely. But I'm much more eyeing like Bitcoin than I, as far as a buying opportunity. If that thing drops, I would be jumping in. Yeah. Peter Schiff is okay. What does this say? I lost it. Where did it go? That's weird. All right. Hi, Emily. I think I just invested in that 180. It was the one that Hunt Brothers has. Emily, thank you so much for being here. You are the inspiration for this video, by the way. I don't know if you got that. But the very beginning of this video, I was breaking down part of that article that you were talking about and how it is that I essentially predicted what it was that was being spoken about in that article 3 years ago. It's really good. Uh, how much? Okay, we're half an hour into this. Do we have any other comments, topics? Do we want to try and increase? If you guys get it up to like, I don't know, 70 likes in the next 2 minutes, we'll stick around. Otherwise, I'm going to go find something else. I got other things going on too. So it's okay. High income earners had an effective tax rate over 90%. After 1980, we stopped taxing high wealth. People are net worth over 100 million currently pay like 5% taxes. Yeah, I don't know why we pay taxes at all. It doesn't make any sense. You know, you can tax 100% of our profits, our income, 100% of corporate profits, and you still wouldn't cover the unfunded liabilities of Social Security and Medicare. I'm not sure why they even tax us other than they're trying to take your time from you. Right? That's it. Like, all right. Let's see here. It's called Honey Badger. They just reopened it. Huh. Anyone shares? Chuck, before they put gold into computers and stuff, what real value did it have other than jewelry? Well, okay, that's actually a really good question. Like, what value did it really have? I don't know, but it served as the value for 5,000 years before the computers. Like, very little else has served as a currency and money, store of value, usefulness in like what you were saying, jewelry or store, like any, like all kinds of stuff, right? Throughout history, it was known and used for that very thing. It was trusted, it was believed in. Like it has a faith that is somehow intertwined with it that's just natural to the human being. We just know that it works, you know? And when it comes like to, things like silver, it's beyond just like, a pretty shiny metal with, the ability to perform technologies. I mean, it was, antimicrobial, it was like, it kept people from getting, spoiling milk and water and helped with infections and stuff like that. All right. Hence the campaign of taxing wealth, not work. Yeah, but okay, so the problem with this is that we're trying to focus in on what it is that we can do to make somebody else pay the price. Now, while you're expending energy doing that, what you are not doing is trying to figure out how it is that you get into cash flow because you can only put, where attention goes, right? That's where your energy flows. So if your attention is, oh, we got to tax the wealthy, we got to do all this other stuff, then your attention and energy goes towards that. And what it doesn't do is go towards something that is going to provide cash flow. Because again, you can only send your attention and energy. I mean, you can spread it out all over the place. That's true. But generally, scattered energy like that doesn't usually perform very well. Right. So I mean, you can do whatever you want. I don't care if you want to try and get them to, make the wealthy pay. That's going to be a good one because they've never done that, but that's okay. I mean, I understand why you would want that, but really the energy that you should be carrying is how do I get in the cash flow? Right. Then you don't care about, I mean, you care about taxes, believe me, I do. But you care about like the wealthy paying tax. You're more like, stop taxing the wealthy so I can actually get ahead here. Because you're trying, right? Because you're trying to get that flow. You're trying to get as much as you can, and you're getting punished for trying to get as much as you can. And that sucks. I know. Right. And so, what am I to do other than try to figure out a way to try and keep it as best I can? So, what is it that I could do? Provide helpful, useful information to the people. But then when I get rewarded for that, I have to say, sorry, guys, I can't spend my time providing good and helpful, useful information to you guys because I now have to spend time and effort and energy to try and figure out a way to keep my money. So, sorry, got to put you on hold so that I can then figure out a way to hold on to some of this. That's where I need to now focus my time, effort, and energy. You see how this is working? It's just like, dang, I was doing this because I wanted to be curious and I got rewarded for it. And I was just like, holy moly, this is all coming in. This is benefiting my life. This is great. What else can I do here? And then all of a sudden I realized, man, you know what? You make a lot of money. You're going to have to pay a lot of money. And I'm like, well, can't I keep some of that? And they're like, well, you can figure out a way to keep it. And I was like, so what was the point of all this? And they were like, yeah, what was the point of that? What were you doing? You see where I'm getting at here? Like, I don't know what it is that people expect from attempting and trying in capitalistic mindsets, but if you want anything in your life, you're on your own. And if you're going to figure it out, you better figure it out in the system and game that they are offering. This tax code is literally written for the entrepreneur. If you don't take advantage of it, you're failing. I know, right? I can see it plain as day now. It's just like, man, this is like no wonder why so many people do it. It's because what else? Like, I mean, you could try harder and then get punished more for it, or you can just be like, well, here, I'm just going to figure out a way not to get punished. I mean, if you want me to try hard, I'm going to try hard at not getting punished. Oh, that sounds great. You know? Tax avoidance is okay. Tax evasion will get you prison. Wage earners don't like the inflation, but it serves the asset holders very well. Well, and again, like if you go and you think about how it is that I was able to predict what it is that was spoken inside of that video that I did, 3 years ago, you would have to think, okay, how is it that I was able to call it out so accurately? And the reasons why I was able to call it out accurately is for the same reasons that I'm calling it out accurately today. And it's because they're trying to stimulate the consumer, the aggregate demand, which is at the top 10, 20% of household incomes. And the only way they can do that is by stimulating the assets. Right? Asset holders are the ones who are going to be participating. The wage earner doesn't matter anymore. Like, it's sad. I mean, it is. It's sad to say it out loud. I feel bad for my buddies out there and everybody else who has tried really hard to create a good experience career inside of the trades, only to find that a good job sucks. And it's going to continue to suck going into the future because they're on the bottom side of the wedge, the K-shaped economy. You can't reverse this. This is the Cantillon effect in full swing. And again, anybody who's trying to, convince you of something different is literally selling you something. I don't know what they're selling you, right? I mean, I'm selling something. I'm selling the credible threat theory. I'm offering you up an ability to then be able to make calls as easily as I did 3 years ago about what it is that we are now experiencing. Like, I'm offering you that exact same thing. All the information that I use to get that is offered to you at the school community, that you can go and download the PDFs that are all highlighted, take them home, play with them, hand them out to your friends. I don't care, right? The information is free. That's up to you to use and take and have and all that other stuff. I've given it many times out here on YouTube. It's all over the place. Now, once you get the theory, once you have understood it, once you have internalized it, there's only one place you can have the conversation. That's at the Uneducated Economist. Nobody else is doing it. This article missed it 3 years ago. They should have been talking about this stuff. Literally 3 years ago, they should have been talking about it. It's what I did. I talked about it 3 years ago. In fact, I talked about it before that. Hey, Justin, great to see you up in here, man. This is because of wealth inequality, and it will accelerate. You're absolutely right. It will accelerate. And you can't stop it, and that's the problem, right? Once you see why it's happening, and you think, okay, well, what can we do to prevent it from occurring? You're literally going to be wasting your time. If you're wealthy, you just have to pay for your wife's lifestyle. Yeah. Well, if you make your wife buy spend $10, if you only give her $10 to buy dinner, to make food, that's, I mean, how much could she possibly be spending? Right? Just give her $10. That's it. Just give her $10 and say that's all you have for a grocery shop, and then come up with a meal and see how well she does. It can be stopped. It can't. Expensive. It can't be stopped. You have to understand there's a couple of economic forces that are playing out, right? And so once you kind of grasp the Cantillon effect and how it is that that cycle works, then you know that once the new money turns off, everything falls into pain and misery and collapse. So it either continues to expand the way it is, or we fall into pain and misery. So yeah, it can be reversed. You're right, but it's not going to be a pretty sight, and it's not going to be fun. Uh, I'm okay, brother. I just know a lot of people who aren't. Who aren't what? I understand that the top 10% of the only ones, top 10 to 20 are the only ones spending money, and they're not the only ones spending money. They're the consumers within the economy. What happens to all these restaurants and jobs and stores, etc., that depend on middle class to stay in business? They're not depending on the middle class to stay in business. All right. The middle class is fading away, and so are those businesses. See, you can find it like, okay, the idea that you're going to find these businesses staying in operation to suit a property owner who does not care to participate in those businesses are not going to be viable businesses. So you really have to think about the property owner themselves and what it is that they want for their desires, their luxuries, and their wants. The idea that this family restaurant is here to bring good family wholesome food at a reasonable price to the people is a working class wage earner mindset that has failed. Right? That mindset has failed. There used to be, when we were a productive saving nation, that's the business you would have want to been in. Right? When we were a productive saving nation, that was exactly the place that you would want to be. But we're not a productive saving nation. So you really have to think, okay, who is it that the asset holders are really wanting to go on Franklin? Are they wanting to go sit down at a family restaurant? Or are they wanting to go to the trendy place? See, here's an example of it because it's quite obvious here in my town. See, like once you recognize the underlying economic forces, how they play out, the gentrification, all that other stuff, then you start to see it happening throughout history. And then once you realize how the Cantillon effect plays out, because he wrote about it 250 years ago, like if this dude wrote about it 250 years ago, why are we reinventing the wheel? I don't understand that, right? So when you think about how it is that the new money had pours into the system, and the people who have first access to that money, they raise their standard of living. It's their wants, their desires, their needs that then shows what it is that are going to be businesses, right? So if you have families rising because of the standard of living that is rising, you got single income and all the money to raise a family on that single income. You got the wife, the kids, the vacations, the college tuitions. You got all that stuff, and it could all happen off of a single income. Then those restaurants can be a viable business inside of that, because that's exactly who it is that they would be catering to. But when those things disappear, then why would the family restaurant still be a viable business? It's not. Right. So this is what we experience here in my little town of Astoria, which is definitely moving into an affluent town. It used to be a working class town. When I was a kid, it was logging and fishing. That's it. That's what brought the new money in. The people who owned homes around here, guess what? Were loggers and fishermen, and people who then had experiences within their skill set that then could provide what it is that the loggers and fishermen wanted so that they could participate in that new money as well. Everybody around here had working class jobs. That has all faded away because as the new money came in from tourism, retirement community, hospital district growing like crazy, all this new money is pouring in. The people who have first access to that money, all the retirees, the remote workers, the hospital district people, they all outpace the logger and fishermen by a lot. So now the logging and fishing community is definitely not the main source of income. It still exists, but it's very, small in comparison to what it is that's going on around here. And the whole community is now a bunch of retirees, hospital districts, remote workers, and they spend a ton of money on fancy little things that are happening here within town, destroying the working class businesses, such as that of my favorite little arcade called Gizmos. Right? Total working class wage earner hangout, dying on the vine. But you go down to the road to the, trendy little, restaurants that they have down there where they're serving their fancy, crafted beers and their, whatever unique little food thing that they have going on, because, they have to be, one up on their uniqueness better than everybody else, because everybody here is obsessed with their, their thing. which is kind of weird for the Pacific Northwest, but everybody here is just super obsessed like that. But what's not going on? Working class living. Nah, homeless is rising, right? You can't live in this town, work in this town and live. Are you kidding me? You know how hard that is? There was a time it was easy. My wife and I graduated high school in 1995 with part-time jobs. We were able to rent an apartment and move out. The day we graduated, we were on our own. Part-time jobs, renting an apartment, living on our own. And been on our own ever since. Can you imagine that today? It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in my little town. Not in Astoria, not anymore. Right? Maybe somebody could do it, but that's not something that people are doing. When I was graduating, that's something that we were doing. There was other kids, other friends of mine who were doing exactly that. Getting apartments, moving out, living on their own, doing their own thing. Right out of high school. Understanding the economic forces is critical to this because you can't change this. You can't reverse this. They're down there having all these meetings about how to deal with the homeless. I'm thinking, you guys know, I know the information that you don't want to hear, and you're not inviting me to come tell it to you. They know it. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear about how it is that all the luxurious things that they brought to this town to make it better for the property owner has absolutely destroyed the ability for people who are at the lower end to try and live here. It's freaking horrible, right? Homeless is just running rampant. When I was a kid, there was one dude who was homeless in Astoria. His name was Lance, right? $2 Lance. He asked for $2 because that's how much a Whopper costs down there at Burger King. It was $1.99. Now, crisis level, literally. They got a state of emergency on account of the homelessness here in my county because of how dramatically the new money is poured into the system, separating the rich from the poor. I think about it myself. If I didn't have this YouTube channel, if I didn't happen to come across to put out the videos, have the position of seeing the lumber industry as accurately as I was able to then share with the people out there the way that I did, I would be gone from this area. It was that's how close I came. I have homeless family, and they are homeless because they don't think that they are a problem in their own life. Well, yeah, and nobody thinks that most people will never admit to themselves that they are the reasons that they suffer the consequences that they do. Now, the day that I was able to finally admit that to myself, which was very late in life, right? Like I just turned 50. I figured this stuff out like 10 years ago, right? It's like I'm going just brand new at it. And 10 years ago, I finally stopped blaming other people. I got off the whole New World Order bit, got out of the conspiracy theories, got out of all that stuff, and just started, focusing in on chasing excellence. And stop drinking too. Yes, my wife and Sarah. He was like, "You could quit drinking too." Kind of a big part of it. Yeah. The book, The Trading Game, has the character called Bill who never went to school but was the bank's best, most profitable economist. Oh, right on. No, I didn't realize that was a book. I thought you were talking about in like reference to just like playing in the stock market. Interesting. Well, I don't know. I was thinking about, adding something to the UE University. Like we're going to do a weekly video review, but I was also thinking we should do like a weekly like book review too. Like, pick a book out and then, read it throughout the week and then review it at the end of the week or once a week or something like that, and add that to the lineup of UE university stuff. Essentially, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I'm like pretty much had it with YouTube, and I would love to just move to a different platform altogether. I love YouTube. I love the audience. I love the viewers. I love everything about it, but I don't like the fact that I get not necessarily censored, but there's actually here, let me just show it to you guys. Let me see if I can bring it up. This is like pretty incredible to see. Let me go find it here real quick, and then I'll show you how dramatically the subscribers that have been removed from the channel is. Let me see if I can get it there. Where is it at? I can't remember exactly where it's at. I gotta search it out. I think it's right here. What's happening, Fred?
You off stream?
Yeah, but I'm still on.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, I can't find it now. Why is that so weird? Oh well. I can't find out where it is now. But it was crazy when I was looking at it. It was just like, man, these subscribers are being removed at a pace that is just too obvious to be like coincidental. Let me see. Ah, there it is. Okay. Oh no, that's not it. Darn it. Oh well. Never mind. I'll find it someday. Rumble. Yeah, people talk about that. You know, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's just like what it is that I was doing for YouTube in the initial days was fun. It was, and I mean, don't get me wrong, this is fun. It was, you know, absolutely enjoyable. But I had a different energy doing that, and it wasn't about making money, and it wasn't about any of that stuff. It was something else. It was something entirely different taking place at the time, and how it's transformed into what it is. I'm not exactly sure why it did that, or even really how. But it turned into something that was like turned into like a business or something of that nature, and that's not what I had initiated or tried to do, and it's not what made it grow as big as it did. So if I'm going to be in the energy of that, then I'm going to be in the energy of that, and that's what I'm pursuing with the U University. There's more education, more thought, more ability to position yourself with that information than anywhere else you're going to get anywhere. I know the value there is beyond belief, and I'm like, I mean, I'm an entertainer. I love getting out and sharing and talking and getting on stage and doing all the other stuff. But when I see where the value really is, then, you know, that's where I'm going to have to pursue it if that's what the intent is. I love YouTube. I love the audience. I love where it brought me. I love everything about it, but I don't like the way I'm getting treated. And that, you know, it's just quite unfortunate. If things were still the same, I wouldn't feel this way, but they're not. And, you know, when I feel like discouraged from putting out videos, like literally like almost to the point that it were like don't be here kind of feelings. What am I to do? Like I like being at places I want to be at, you know? And so, you know, that's just the unfortunate consequences of some of the things that I'm experiencing here. And I'm sure that, you know, other people have probably noticed the, you know, dramatic shift in how it is that this channel used to be and the way it is today. I mean, I can't help the information that I have come across, and I could be the superficial person out there sharing stuff that, you know, money printer go burr kind of things, and then, you know, really probably get a lot of attention doing it. But the reality is that we're much deeper, much more accurate, much farther into this than anybody ever could have possibly given a consideration for. And knowing that I have been able to like accurately call out many, many things within this economy, I, you know, I'm wanting to share that. I do. I want to share it with people, and I want other people to hear it. And I know those who really want it will go seek it out. So that's where I'm at on it. You know? They are totally wasted. You like the title? Isn't that good? I love the wasted, passed out bankers, you know, on their trading desk, all like hammered like junkies. Gary's Economics. No, I don't like him. I've listened to his stuff. He's superficial. He doesn't really he talks hypothetical. He doesn't talk any kind of real sense to me when it comes to like truly understanding the position that we are now sitting in and how it is that you can conduct yourself. He talks in the ways that it should be, could be, or ought to be, but not in a way that is meeting the true reality of the situation. He might understand it, but his stick, his whole, how do you say that, shtick, is to convince the people that there's a better way out there instead of trying to show people that they can find a better way right now. I mean, don't get me, I don't have anything personally against him. I just don't like the way he's conducting his stuff. I mean, it's just like I'm not into it. Yeah, it's false hopes. It's misguiding. Yeah. He doesn't teach economics like this channel does. No, like, okay, so don't get me wrong. I have I am not somebody who says that I can understand his stuff completely. I am not that person, right? I didn't study it enough. I didn't go into it deep enough. I have listened to a few of his videos and some of his stuff, and I think to myself, this is not helpful. No inflation would be scary as F. Yeah, Emily, you're right. Hey, UE, another mill closure in British Columbia last week. That's over 20 in 7 years, right? I keep saying it. I keep saying, man, the supply is getting tighter. It's only a matter of time before the demand picks up, and it's just going to overwhelm that supply, and people are going to lose it. Yeah. Simon's on a mission. There it is, to let people see the wage earner in the mirror and encourage them to pursue asset holding. That's right, Justin. Like, here's the thing. When I was talking to Sarah about this earlier, when I first started this channel, it was awesome because there was like, when you get a reflection of just exactly what it is that you're thinking and feeling on the inside, right? So everything out there that you see, this is what you're thinking and feeling. So if you're negative, depressed, conspiracy theorist, what are you going to see out there, right? Probably a whole lot of horribleness. Now, the more I started diving into this channel, I realized, man, I was thinking and feeling and acting and behaving and realizing that I was just like a whole bunch of other people out there. And I caught the attention of a lot of people because of a lot of the things that I was saying and feeling and thinking and believing, right? And now, as I began to refine that and get my education closer and closer to the place that we are today, I realized, man, there was only a handful of people who were really trying to keep up. And so as I started to keep, refining this thing down and breaking it down and getting closer and closer to where we are today, people kept falling off saying, dude, I just don't get it, man. Don't you understand how the money printer works? And they just kept falling away. I'm making videos like this one, getting high and staying high, and people are, disappearing. We get to this level right here, and I feel that I have gotten this so dialed in, like with such pinpoint accuracy, that nobody can even come close to touching my stuff anymore. All right. Like they're good. They got a lot of it. They key in on a lot of stuff, but they do not get to the credible threat theory. They don't get down to it to the level that I have, and breaking it down to the way that I have, in a way that the wage earner should be able to then grasp and take off with it. But then I realized at that point, I don't have them with me anymore. And I'm now in this very narrow bandwidth of people who are truly, truly trying to figure this thing out for themselves. And that's the energy that I am carrying and they are carrying. And that's why we are now a very thin margin of people. I mean, to think about it, to even understand something like the neutral interest rate is probably less than 1% of the nation. And then of those people, can you imagine being able to incorporate a strategy so well that you can call it out 3 years earlier? That's probably that much of the amount of people out there. Nobody, not a single person that I know had ever mentioned anything like I talk about. Not at the Rebel Capitalist, not at Zuber's convention, not at the Silver Symposium. None of these places did anybody bring up anything like I was talking about. I was literally out on my own. Isn't the real crisis just supply chain disruptions and no liquidity? Well, what position are you asking that from? But the only answer is to get into assets, whether you get it or not. Well, yeah. Like, what else are you going to do? I mean, you can start businesses. You can try and save, but I'm not sure how you're going to do that without getting into assets because there's really nothing that you can save. Maybe gold and silver, cryptocurrency if you're lucky or something like that. But there's really nothing you can save in because there's no currencies out there that hold value because their currency is not meant to hold value. So what else are you going to do? Like, I mean, outside of starting businesses or investing into assets or property, I'm not like, again, assets, like, I'm not sure what else that one could do. It's like, your day job ain't going to do it. Absolutely, I did. I talked for like DW Ethiopia. Why do you say that Ethiopia? DW Ethiopia? How do you say that name? Right? Of course, I've talked about the Cantillon effect. How could you have the uneducated economist on for an hour and not be talking about the Cantillon effect? That doesn't make any sense, of course. Isn't this like zombie corporations? It's just propped up inflation. Well, yeah, but I mean, isn't the whole system a farce anyway? I mean, to say like, it's propped up on a fake liquidity, like, yeah, it's all like kind of a farce anyway. That's the reason why you have to get into real assets, real tangible stuff. Like, for most people who listen to the idea of assets, they literally think, okay, stock market and houses, and that's it. Like, they don't think about anything else. But there's a million assets out there that you can position yourself into according to what it is that you're looking for in your own life. Pretty much it's all fake. We're bailing out countries all over the world because their fiat currencies failed. Venezuela, Argentina, Turkey, Vietnam, Japan. That's fine. Better to get it out of here than keep it, right? You got to understand, if we don't get it out of this country, we are going to be in a hell of a position as the dollar demand starts to explode. We got to figure out a way to get it out of this country. There's no better way than to just hand it to people who are wasteful with it. And that's what's crazy to think. Like, we as like individuals want to think, okay, well, they should be responsible and, conduct themselves in a way that's going to be like, keep the money, keep it safe, keep it secure, kind of thing like that. But that's not the way that this whole thing works, right? See, trying to get the money out of the country is probably one of the hardest things out there. It's Triffin's dilemma. This is another thing, another reason why you got to join the channel, because we break down certain economic forces that are going to play out that nobody wants to talk about, that have been established and recognized and communicated for years, decades, hundreds of years, even at times, and definitely are aware of when it comes to the powers that be. So things like Triffin's dilemma, this is something that really needs to be understood. It's about getting the money out of this country. And the easiest way to do that is to run deficit trade, meaning import more than you export. If you import more than you import stuff and you export dollars. And that is the reason why we are never, ever, ever going to solve the trade deficit, is because then we would end up importing more dollars than we export. And once we start importing dollars, we will destroy the nations of the world. King Dollar, the destroyer, will come in and rain devastation on all the nations out there who decided that they were going to take out dollar-denominated debt. All these nations like China, Brazil, all these BRICS nations, they have all of them, except for maybe Russia, have taken out dollar-denominated debt, meaning that they have written bonds in their local currency, like their China government says, I owe you 100 US dollars, and they sold that into the economy. It doesn't have anything to do with the United States. It doesn't have anything to do with us in our banks, our corporations, our people, or nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with us. But China wrote a debt that is due in dollars. When that debt comes due, it demands dollars. When that debt gets written, it enters into the economy as if it was brand new dollars being created. These dollars circulate. Didn't have anything to do with the United States. We didn't create it. China created this. They've entered this debt into circulation, and they're not the only ones who've done it. There's literally entities all over the world doing this all day. They're creating dollars out of thin air by creating these debts that are due in dollars, and they demand real dollars to pay them back. These things enter circulation and act like dollars. They start providing transactions. How do you facilitate all that demand for liquidity? The Federal Reserve is going to have a problem at some point in the future, and it's not trying to figure out how they're going to deal with the inflationary scenarios. How the hell do they print up enough money to provide to the world to meet the demand for the dollars? That's the major problem they're going to face. And you can almost see it taking place right now. Nobody wants to. I mean, there's a few economists out there, Jeff Snyder, Brent Johnson. These guys are really into it. They definitely see it. Yeah. But to think that it doesn't exist, hey, that's wrong. You know. They inflated the debt away. That's exactly what they are going to do it again. That's like, I mean, it's so secondary to the major problem. It's like, it's not even secondary. That's so far down the line. It's like almost distracting from what it is that you should be looking at. I mean, do they inflate the debt away? Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. But it goes so much, like, to understand how it is that the monetary policy is working so that you can position yourself. That is probably one of the last things you really even care about. Yeah. I mean, I kid you not, like, you come to the UE University, in the conversations that we have, that's not one of them that they discuss very much. Yeah. King dollar is destroying Japan. All I know is inflation is much higher than what they admitted it to, and it's destroying people's ability to save. Okay, Todd, perfect. See, now here's the thing. This is the exact mindset that benefits the Federal Reserve. And I'm trying to share this with you, right? This is exactly why it is that I made that video 3 years ago, getting high and staying high. Is that once you have this expectation that the inflation is locked in, punishing you, what it does is it raises the inflation expectation and lowers the real interest rate. That lowering of real interest rate based on your pain and suffering and misery that you're expressing, especially when you share that with other people who feel the same way, what that does is it benefits the asset holder. So every time we think about it in this fashion, not only are we expressing it as a wage earner who is never going to benefit from this idea, and we're also delivering more power to the Federal Reserve so that they can deliver that purchasing power capabilities to the asset holder. So literally, the mindset is giving them the power that they need. Now, I'm not trying to be accusatory or anything like that. I mean, somewhat, but not like mean or anything. That's not my intention. It's just that once you see through the lens of the credible threat theory, that's exactly the way you'll be looking at it. The average citizen in the United States doesn't even know what inflation is, brother. We shouldn't. That's not true. And you know why it's not true? It's because it was expressed on every single news channel, every single social media, every single talking show like The View. Everybody learned about inflation because it was part of something that they called as the makeup strategy, where they were going to purposefully deliver expectations of elevated inflation into the economy through things like that of music videos and Facebook posts and Twitter posts. Like, they admit this. This was part of their strategy plan. So yeah, you're right. They don't understand inflation, but they definitely got it when it was hand fed to them. Do you think anybody in America can understand Kevin Warsh's babble? No, they heard one thing: 2% target. That's it. That's the only thing they heard. That was forward guidance being delivered to the people. All right. They heard one thing: 2% target. That's it. I did a video earlier today on how that is a complete freaking lie. 100% lying through his teeth. Couldn't believe it. Like, how how like I mean, it's how blatantly he was lying through his teeth when he made that statement. Wow, they run it at 8% and tell everybody it's 4%. Todd, it's okay, man. I get it, man. I used to be very accusatory of the Fed too. I didn't like. I originally started to even research the Federal Reserve because I wanted to disassemble them from being a political affiliate. Like being political. Like that was my intention, but it evolved into something way different, right? Kevin is going to redefine inflation to market 2%. My wife always complains why we ran out of money before the end of the month. I told her not worry because it was inflation expectations. Gold is compounding at 8% to 11% year since 2000. Yeah, but the problem with that is like, how do you get a yield off of that? Or you get paid? You got to sell it, right? Like if you had a rental income, you would have an increase in price and you'd also get paid the entire time. If you had dividend paying stocks, you may have an increase in value and you get paid the entire time. Or you even have bonds, you get paid the entire time. Right. But when you own gold, you don't own anything that pays you. Right? You own a security, an insurance policy, you own a position that's outside of a third party risk, but you don't own yield. Right. And that's what it comes down to. Like once you kind of figure this stuff out, it comes down to being a yield chaser. You're looking for yield wherever you can get it. And then you look at yield and you compare it to the inflationary scenario and then figure out what your real interest rate is, because that's the way you start viewing it as an asset holder. Wage earners think about, how much money is tied up in their gold. That's a wage earner view. And again, I'm trying to pinpoint it out so that you can recognize how it is that's happening. I mean, you got to think, if you're not going to be thinking like an asset holder, what are you thinking like? I see both views clearly. I know, right? Definitely a wage earner who's trying to be the asset holder. And I can recognize when it is that I'm thinking like a wage earner and when it is that I'm thinking like an asset holder. And it's very difficult to necessarily have the instinctual capabilities to just make that snap decision when it's just happening right there in front of you. The more you start to think like the asset holder, the more instinctual, behavior you will then move into. And you won't even be thinking about it like a wage earner anymore. It's a K-shaped economy, right? Like, think about that. It's K-shaped. There's two tiers. It's two people. It's two differences, right? Which one are you? Gold has done its job over the years. It's absolutely protected people from inflation and money destruction, and it will continue to do that until they quit printing money. Todd, how? How? Like I got this thing. I bought it a while ago. How has it protected me other than I have to go sell it? Right? I mean, it took my money I could have put it into something that could have paid me a yield. But no, I put it into this. Okay? I put it into this and now it sits on a shelf and it doesn't do anything for me, but hopefully protect me into the future. I could sell it and make my money off of it. Very true. But then I don't have it anymore, and so much goes for having it, right? How does it protect me? It doesn't protect me. It's an insurance policy, right? It protects the possibility of something happening. But inflation is running rampant right now. This still sits on a shelf. It could be collecting yield. What you're holding is money. You don't sell money. You spend it when you need something, but that's something with silver. Todd, once you sell it, it's gone. Once it's gone. Here's the story. There was a guy who sent me an email. He talked about growing up in Cuba. All right. He said he was in Cuba. He says before, Cuba fell or collapsed or whatever. He said when he was there as a kid, it was really nice because the Russians gave him all kinds of awesomeness, right? He says he remembers as a kid that the Russians loaded him up for like school lunches and stuff, and that they had these muffins, like just massive amounts of muffins, and so many muffins that they had like these muffin wars. They would throw them at each other and stuff because there was so many muffins around. His parents or grandparents had purchased gold coins for their security in case if anything was to happen. And when things went bad and they got hungry, those gold coins got unloaded almost immediately, and they never got anything really from them. They ate for a short amount of time, and that was really all they did. See, here's the problem with this is that if you are intending on using that gold for your protection against a collapse or against an inevitable horrible experience that may be coming into the future, you got to hold on to it through all that so that you can invest on the other side of it. I mean, otherwise, you might as well you're going to give it up to eat and then it'll all be gone. Well, great survival tool, I guess, if that's what you're expecting from it. But if you're really looking to it for protection against an inevitable collapse of a government system and a banking system, then you have to go through the horridness and then invest on the other side of that. That is not going to be fun. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you're in a mindset that says, oh no, man, my silver is totally going to protect me, I can totally, survive, and I'll just cash it in until the day I die and I'm going to have plenty of it. Cool, man. That's a great position to be in, man. But that's very rare that anybody has it like that. Most people have to figure out a place to get yield. They have to get paid. And the only way to get paid, dividend paying stocks, owning companies, having, rental properties. These are the places that you get paid. Then you can find security, safety, savings by buying into the asset like silver or gold. But it's not like here's the problem that I have with silver. Here, I'm going to give you a real personal story here on this because, I'm usually pretty open and most of the guys already know this. But Todd, if you're still listening, this is a problem that I faced with silver, is that there was a moment in my life when I was completely broke. I had nothing. I had a broken down car. I was completely in debt, had absolutely no savings whatsoever, and I needed a vehicle to get to work, and I had nothing, literally nothing. Call up my buddy, and I said, dude, you still got that Tahoe for sale? And he says, yes, I do. And I said, would you trade silver for it? And he says, you know it. I said, will you bring it up here? And he says, I'll be there in a few minutes, bud. Right? He comes up. I open up a box, pull out 165 ounces of silver. It was $17 an ounce at the time. I remember that. I pull out 165 ounces of silver. He signs the title over to me, and I had wheels. I was driving again. I thought to myself, holy moly, man, that is so awesome. I will never, ever be without silver. Now, up until that point, I had taken all my money and I dumped it into silver thinking that silver was going to go to the moon. When silver hit $50 an ounce, I thought I was the smartest person in the entire world and everybody should have listened to me, and everybody else got it wrong. A few years later, silver had trickled all the way down into its teens, and I was completely upside down in it, had tons of debt, losing my house, going into foreclosure, debt, drunk, bad place to be. That's what silver gave me for an experience. It saved me with me having the ability to use it to buy a car. And I've done it several times since then. I will always, always, always own some silver. It is an insurance policy against the unknown. It will save you in many circumstances. It is worth it. But to only count on silver is a very narrow view approach to what it is that we are facing going into the future. Because if you're not chasing yield, you're going to get left behind. You have to work so hard to acquire the silver that you will never be able to acquire enough to live for the rest of your life. It'll be that difficult. But there is places you can go to get a return, to find that yield, to get the rental income, to get the dividend, to get the payment somewhere, somehow from someone. Business, right? Without it, you'll be left behind. And that's all there is to it. I mean, you can work and get all that silver, but then you have to work. Think about how hard you have to work to acquire the silver, how much you have to cut back on your life in order to get those bars of silver, only to hold on to them as tight as you can till the very last day of your life. Does that sound like a plan? Or wouldn't you rather sit back and watch a dividend payment come through? I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I'd rather have a pile of silver and a dividend payment. Simon, did you pay capital gains when you sold your silver? No, I guess I didn't, right? Because the silver at the time that I did sell it was a loss. So I didn't have any capital gains at the time that I did. The other silver was essentially purchased back at a higher price, so I didn't have any capital gains on that either. Right? Isn't that funny? Because I didn't have capital gains on my trade. I actually took a loss by buying the car, and I bought my silver back at a higher price. So there was no capital gains on either one of them. I don't know all the tax loopholes. That is not true. If in fact that was true, it would be a much different thing happening. A good quality company is an asset similar to gold and silver. You just can't use stocks as money. They are a great way to save. Yeah. And again, everybody's like, they got their own personal choice. And don't get me wrong, like I like the idea of having silver and gold. Like, I'm big into it. I mean, my ring, 50-cent piece, right? That's been made into my ring. I got this silver necklace. I'm into it. But I've also learned that, man, if you're going to have anything in your life, you got to be able to chase yield. You got to be able to find it somewhere, somehow. You could have used it as against the loss against income. Yeah, but it was, well, I mean, at the time, like, when I took that hit on it, I mean, I doubt it was that much. And at the time, it was like, I was so broke. I mean, I'm getting a tax return, from earned income credit and all that. It's just like I wasn't stressing it. K-shaped economy is the new rich get richer, poor get poorer. Yeah, but it's more than just that. It's understanding how it's taking place, right? Because everybody's always said it, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, but that's literally a very like simplistic way of saying the Cantillon effect. Knowing how the Cantillon effect plays out, and then you understand why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's not just a matter of like, well, they're doing it to you. And it was just like, not really. It's the new money that pours in. I will sing to Simon, bad boy, what you gonna, I will be singing, I say. The Fed has no choice. The government has no choice. They have to continue the deficit spending or they can't pay pensions and benefits. But Simon, where was the Cantillon effect after World War II? What do you mean? When the rich paid their share? For a minute? Like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about a short blip of time in which some forces were inflicted upon the people that eventually had the underlying economic forces playing out? I mean, if you want to narrow it down to a very short window of like say, hey, well, let's talk about between these two periods right here when literally the Cantillon effect plays out over hundreds of years. Is that what you're trying to describe? Because you can forcefully make an outcome take place and say, well, what about that 10 years right there? Well, we forced this outcome. And I'm thinking, well, if you had ever increasing amounts of government intervention, then you would probably still have that outcome. But eventually the government couldn't intervene any longer and they had to let go. And the underlying economic forces came snapping back to the reality. It's like trying to, subsidize factories in the United States or try to inflict tariffs to create factories here in the United States. It's the lamest thing in the entire world. It won't happen. You can talk about it, theorize on it, show suggestions of it, but it doesn't occur. And when it does, it's very short-lived, unprofitable because you're competing against people who sleep on the ground. A high standard of living. See, this is the thing about it, is like once you understand how the Cantillon effect plays out, then you recognize it within history and then within the politics of things. See, like I'll just explain it. When you rise as a standard of people, and it doesn't matter if you're an individual or if you're a country or if you're a municipality, it doesn't matter. It all goes down the same way, right? If you rise as an industrious person, what happens, right? You get new money in. What do? You go and you rent a nicer place. You go and buy a nicer car. You wear nicer clothes. You eat better food, right? You raise your standard of living. So, as an industrious nation like the United States was, and we turned into a manufacturing powerhouse, we produced the world's greatest stuff, especially after World War II, right? So here we are, this manufacturing powerhouse producing the world's greatest stuff, sending that stuff out there to the world, and the world was sending us what? Gold, right? So they sent us all this gold, and we had all this gold coming into the United States, not only from the war, but then also from all this manufacturing that we're doing. We're sending all these wonderful products out there to the world. Our standard of living starts to rise because we have all the gold. Well, if you go and you read the Cantillon essay, you know what happens next? Because you raised your standard of living, you have now purchased all these products. You're consuming a lot more. Prices start to increase, and foreign competition says, hey, you guys have pretty high prices there from all that consumption you're doing, all that new money that's coming in, raising your standard of living, and got all that consumption, all that new money. Hey, we build stuff over here too. It's not as good as your stuff, but we build stuff. You want some of our stuff? And the people with new money says, hell yeah, we want your stuff. You think we want to spend our new money on expensive things? We want to buy it on cheap things. Yes, bring us that foreign product. So the foreign product came in, and the domestic manufacturer's like, yo, what up? And they're like, sorry, domestic manufacturer, you're going to have to go and manufacture over in that foreign land. So adios, right? See ya. So as the foreign production comes in, the domestic manufacturers leave. The wedge of inequality is driven. New money comes in. People who have first access to the new money spend it on that foreign production. Foreign production continues to pour in. Domestic manufacturers continue to leave, and the wedge of inequality is driven even deeper as the manufacturers, where the good jobs now leave a society of inequality that is now driven even deeper. Cantillon effect, chapter 6, 7, and 8. Right? This isn't me making it up. It's a dude who was describing how it works 200 years ago from things that he was witnessing from thousands of years before him. Right? This will continue until the new money pours off. And when the new money turns off, we don't produce the goods and services here in the United States to maintain that elevated standard of living, and everybody falls into pain and misery. Alan Greenspan predicted this years ago. He did. Straight up, when they asked him, it was just like, what about these bond payments? He says, hey, you don't have to worry about the Social Security payments. We can pay those into any degree, right? The United States can pay any bill it wants to any size, to any degree, to any length into the future with zero chance of default. Zero. Right? Because it has a printing press. It can always pay the debt. Zero chance of default. However, all the creative financing in the world does not produce the goods and services. Those have to be purchased from foreigners. So all this creative financing that can pay any debt it wants into the future for any size, any length, any time, does not have the capabilities of producing goods and services. And when those payments come through and the benefits do not purchase goods and services because they're not produced here, we're going to have a problem. And that's coming. That situation is essentially here for a lot of people, and it's going to get worse. He warned about it. It's occurring now. There's really nothing you can do to stop it because it's the underlying economic force that is playing out. No matter what creative financing you do, no matter who you tax, who you charge, whatever it is you're doing out there, unless you're willing to sleep on the ground, you're not going to be able to compete against those other people out there. And we are going to suffer the consequences from that. You better position yourself accordingly. All right. All All right, Todd, I'm sorry I would sit here and love what I've answered about as many questions. If you want to dive any deeper into it, you're going to have to become a member of the community, right? And have the conversation with us, and we can sit there and talk all day long, all you like. But we're going to have to move on. No car? Of course I got the car. I just don't sit in the car. I like this office better because I got this here microphone. I got these lights. Got this comfortable chair. I like it. Thanks. All right. Deplorable. Another one who should be in the community. All right. Yeah, there's a lot of homeless people that just could not keep up. Probably a lot of them committed. You know what? Yeah. Our debt is past the point of no return. Oh, yeah. There's like, that's not something that's like coming back. Like, you're not going to be able to fix the debt issue. That's just not. From the medical field, we used to have plenty of resources for people that were mentally ill. Now there's nothing. Well, it's probably because there's so many people who are mentally ill now. Like, how do you take care of all those people? It's like, it's pretty ugly out there. Yeah. I mean, I agree, Todd. That's like, something that there really needs to be a lot more attention to that, for sure. And if you're somebody who's in the medical field, I'm sure you probably witness it a hell of a lot more than most people. When will the when will the mass rebel? They won't. So long as they have Wi-Fi and a donut, they're cool. It's an excuse to keep the masses uneducated on why their standard of living is getting pounded in the behind. Well, is an excuse. I mean, how come? It's not like the Cantillon effect is hidden from people's knowledge. Like, I mean, are they supposed to teach you the Cantillon effect? Is that a requirement? Like, it was just some dude who came up with this idea, wrote it down in an essay. I mean, it's up to us to figure that out. I mean, does people even know that the Cantillon effect even exists? Like, how is it that they're supposed to teach the kids something they don't even know exists? It's like all knowledge is accessible to the schools. It's a big club and you ain't in it. Yeah, but I think that's okay. Because it's like, I don't even really want to be in their club. But if I can recognize how it is that their club is played, like they can play the game, it's just like, yeah, go ahead and have your little club, suckers, right? I can play that game. So it's not like it's I mean, they do hold secrets, that's for sure, but it's not like you can't figure this thing out for ourselves, right? So it may be a big club and we ain't in it, but I think we can figure it out enough that we can make it useful to us. The reason the debt is a problem is because the federal government wealth is getting pillaged by the top 1%. Sorry, bro. Yeah, not a concern. All right. I mean, maybe I guess that could be concerning for some people. It's not a concern of mine. We can only feed off of their scraps. Gemini is owned by Simon. Every time I try to talk to Gemini about economics, he always brings up the Cantillon effect. Yeah, it's because you've asked about it so many times. Maybe deplorable, you need to spell it correctly. Here, try it like this: Cantillon, Cantillon. Cold card disaster. I bet the club can't feed 6 people for $10. SpaghettiOs 23. I bet you're right. It was so funny. I had that video up there, the last one that we did, and All Nighter was in it with us. It was pretty fun. And somebody in the comments section said, "Oh, big deal! Like, do this every day for a month." And I'm like, give me just a little bit here. Sarah's done 6 of these videos. She can do it every single day if she wanted to. So yeah, give it a little bit here, and I'll have 30 of those videos up. I already got another one I need to upload. So or edit and upload. So yeah, it's like, sure, 30 of them, no problem. right? Sarah can do it every single time. Thoughts on AI bubble? I don't know. That one's going to be hard to predict, like what it is that's going to happen. Like I don't know if that really changes much of my belief in what it is that's happening within the monetary policy. The one thing that I definitely look at is the inflation expectations in relation to the neutral interest rate and how it is that the Federal Reserve is positioned for that, should whether or not they're restrictive or accommodating within their policy. And that's something that I've been talking about for quite some time. I don't know if AI bubble changes much of that, like other than the inflation expectation part of things. Like it might expedite and push that higher, but it doesn't really change much else. Yeah. What time is it, Mama? Are we getting late here? What? Oh, that sun is bright orange. Look at that. Wow.
It is 8:16.
8:16. AI is going to rule the world. Machines will tell us what to do. You know, this is something that I find pretty interesting because I think about like AI ruling the world. And one of the things that I think AI will never be able to do is what I'm doing right now. Like they can perform a video, make it look just like I am doing right now, but to be able to get the authenticity, the screw ups, the whatever, that's going on in it, you're not going to get that realism with AI. And even as close as they can make it, it's still not the same connection as being able to connect with somebody for real. And that's really what I find is going to happen out there is live performances, live interactions, human connections are going to become very valuable as AI destroys everything that was talent from the past. If it's recorded, it can be AI. But if it's live on stage, you can't fake that. Okay, buy homes now, inflation coming. Cantillion. There you go. Moses got it. I have thought on AI, but nobody wants to hear them. They will scare you. I made dinner for two tonight for $2. Right on, Emily. Butter basil pasta sounds wonderful. Basil from my garden, even better, right? Good job, Emily. Have you used Cloud lately? Check it out if not. The one thing I like using AI for is debating. Like I'll debate because it's an instant fact checker against you. And so I tell it was just like, in the mindset of Peter Schiff, whatever Peter Schiff, just kind of debate against it, and I have fun time just kind of debating using AI to hone essentially, my understanding of what it is that I feel is happening with monetary policy. It's one of the reasons why I'm so good at it. It's because I just constantly like ask questions like that. I won't use AI, Emily says, but my 97-year-old mom is very into it. She's been using it to find out what some art and furniture is worth. I tell her not to believe it and to get a real appraisal. We appreciate your time and knowledge, Simon. Well, thank you, Martin. I appreciate you being here and sharing your guys' thoughts and ideas with the community here. How much is the school community? It is $20 a month. It is $20 a month. And really, the $20, what you get for that, and besides the access to the webinars and the community and being able to ask us questions and have a direct conversation with me, outside of just being able to do that for the month, you'll also have access to the credible threat theory, the full access to the credible threat theory, which is a video course that I put together. It's about a 45-minute, just shy of an hour seminar, essentially, video modules that I put together to describe how it is that the Federal Reserve uses their words to push the inflation expectation around in relation to the neutral interest rate, very much like what this article is describing. The credible threat theory video module details that out, how that works exactly. Okay? Then there's also all the speeches, not all of them, but all the good ones, all the speeches that I have collected and highlighted for you to download and keep. So you'll get the video module that you can then learn the credible threat theory from, get that understanding of the neutral interest rate, R star, all that other stuff. It becomes, you got to listen to that a few times. You'll get that internalized, and then you'll have all those PDFs. And that's essentially the bulk of what you're going to get for $20, and it's well worth it, right? Just that alone is worth $20. But the real value is coming in and having a conversation and then breaking that stuff down to get a better understanding of how it is that you position yourself for that information and with that information. I believe that you could probably get that done in about a month, but it's probably going to take a couple of months of being in the community, having the conversation, and internalizing all that information. Now, if you've been following the channel for a long time, then a month, easy, right? Easy, hone it all in. You're going to love the channel. You're going to love, the conversations that we have. And I assure you that once you get into the community and you start hanging out for those webinars that we have, you're not going to want to give it up, because the stuff that we talk about is just too good. I mean, we're talking, like, some people are talking about how they're doing their trades. Other people are talking about how they're doing business. Other people are talking about how it is that they're finding information from other parts and resources, and then, bringing that into the credible threat theory light. It's much more in depth than anything that I am sharing here on YouTube. That's for sure. Right. Like, if you think that I get in depth here, this isn't even close, you know? So that's what you get for joining the UE University, is you're really jumping into a community of people who are really concentrated and have internalized this view and are now sharing how it is that sharing the view of through the lens of the credible, everything that they're seeing. So yeah, like, it's the best place. And that's really the only place you can go to have the conversation like this. Yeah, other than the one-sided conversation that I have here on a live stream or something. And you get to share like, literally, if you don't like talking, that's fine. You don't actually have to communicate in words. You can, ask questions in the comment section on the side. We'll still address your questions. And it's not too far off from this, but it's better because then you get other people who join in, who then put their insights. So I'm, like, literally just sitting back listening to, one of the other guys, one of the other, viewers of the channel, share their thoughts and ideas on the question that was asked. We got Infamous up in here. Where is it? Ah, there it is. Infamous NYC. Thank you so much for being here. Back on the road for work in Indiana this time. Crazy how expensive simple hotels are. Going back to sleeping in the truck to save. Gave up on my NYC apartment to focus on investing. Right? Oh, it's great to see you up in here. Infamous NYC. Oh, that's right. All-nighters heading to Indiana here pretty soon. Gemini is my best friend. Deplorable. That's funny. They don't censor you at the school community either. That's so true, Justin. And that's one of the things that I really feel is, like, I can be, like, I just finally, like, I just can't help it but to finally just drop it in here. But, like, trying not to say particular words or sentences or phrases or something like that is not me. Like, I don't want to be that way. I just want to be able to cut loose and say whatever it is that I want to say or need to say, and not have to think of, like, oh, damn it, I said that phrase. I probably shouldn't have done that. It's going to trigger the, like, that is nowhere near where I want to be. Like, away from that. And I don't feel anything like that when I'm at the school community. There's nobody there to censor me. Like, it's not that type of platform. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely have to watch the replay. The first, probably, 20 minutes, I would say, 15 minutes into the video are the best. I think probably the first 15 minutes. That's what most of my videos are. Like, really, after the first 10 or 15 minutes, it's just conversation anyway. I've always wanted to be a good vagabond. Discussing details with my stepmom about dad's funeral still seems unreal. Ooh, yeah. That must be tough. Uh, uh, They would never tell us if it was an extinction level threat anyway. No, probably not. Last time I tried to be a vagabond, my dad beat the laziness out of me. Jeez. Yeah, just trying to meet goals for retirement and keeping that NYC spot was pointless all these years. Travel for workshop much to make use of it. Yeah, sorry to hear that, memory man. Yeah, for sure. Vagabond. That's it. Vagabond, vagabond. I was wondering about that. Alrighty, guys. Are we done? Hour and 45 minutes into this live stream. I think it's really important to kind of internalize the ideas of what it is that was being spoken there within the ideas of the neutral interest rate being elevated from the position of a few years ago, and that our star environment is not something that is well talked about or discussed or even understood by anybody out there. But to know that it is a position in which that the Federal Reserve is looking at and does create a accommodating or restricting position within the Federal Reserve, depending on how that neutral interest rate is moving. Very few people, again, will discuss it or even think about it being a real thing. So consider that I had put out that video over 3 years ago discussing that exact thing and what it is that we are facing. It's pretty evident that the credible threat theory is pretty much the most accurate one, if not the only one that is accurate for all these years consistently. Brief summary of all the info. Yep, there it was. What does it say? Hello. What pressures exist for the Fed to lower the interest rates as well as what are the pressures to raise the interest rates? Okay, that's a good question. And you're going to make me sit out here for another 15 minutes to describe it. What are the pressures to raise or lower interest rates? Okay. If you could understand how the Federal Reserve is neutral right now, right, it's going to be pretty interesting to think how it is that the Federal Reserve in the position right now is restrictive, but here in a couple of months, even though they haven't moved, it's accommodating. So the Fed could shift from being a restrictive monetary policy to an accommodating one and never once ever move their interest rates. Right? So when you talk about what it is that they're going to be doing that's going to pressure to raise or lower interest rates, they don't need to. There's no pressure. They can pressure inflation around. By pushing inflation around, they can raise and lower that neutral interest rate. And by raising and lower the neutral interest rate, they can make the economy more or less restricted or accommodating. So when you talk about the pressures that's going to force the Federal Reserve to lower rates, you're kind of looking at it from a wage earner point of view. And I'm not being accusatory, right? Again, there's two views. What you're looking at it as a wage earner point of view, you're waiting to see where your interest rate on your mortgage, your car, your credit card, whatever, you're looking for those rates to come down. That's why the question comes in, or if it's going to be more painful. But the reality is if the asset holder was looking at it, they wouldn't be asking the question of whether or not the Fed is going to be pressured to raise or lower interest rates. They're going to be looking at what pressures in the economy will raise and lower the neutral rate. Because the Fed doesn't have to move. And so when you ask the questions, what pressure is going to force the Fed to move? That's not really the way you should be looking at it. But if you want to look at it that way, it's when the unemployment starts to rise. It's when the inflation gets out of control. Because they're mandated to do two things: low inflation with stable prices and full employment. But what if those aren't a problem? What if they aren't a problem? Like, inflation's a problem. Everybody says it's a problem. Warsh tried to make sure that everybody knew that the Federal Reserve doesn't see anything but a 2% target, which was absolutely lying through his teeth, right? And we proved that this morning through all the documents of the Federal Reserve through their own words, which is just blows me away that Warsh was so willing to just do that. Like, I can't believe that the committee was so willing to allow Warsh to get out there and say those words. It's like it literally was lying through his teeth, right? And now I know a lot of other people say, oh, they lie all the time. It was just like, no, this was a blatant lie that you can then go and find the documents that literally say exactly the opposite of what it is that he was trying to portray. He was like, literally, he was trying to say that I don't know where all, like, literally, Warsh was coming out going, I don't know where all these people get this idea that the Fed was going for something other than a 2% target. That is not right. Right? This is what Warsh says. The Fed has, always will, and going to see a 2% target as the only thing. It's a hard target of 2%. But yet, asymmetrical flexible average inflation targeting was a real thing from the Federal Reserve for 5 years straight. Average flexible inflation targeting. Or I'm sorry, asymmetrical flexible average inflation targeting. AFIAT. I don't know how the hell they're saying it. Yeah. And now when he says that didn't exist, it's just like, of course it existed, bud. It was 5 years straight within your own statement strategies. It was like it's like literally saying it was just like, I don't know. It's like, you got that blue hoodie on. It's like, no, I don't. I was like, well, no, you're wearing it right now. It was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. It was just like, dude, you can't, don't be so delusional, man. It's like, it's obvious, right? And it was just like, no, it's not. That's literally like what he's doing. It was, and now I know that's part of the forward guidance. It's part about delivering the message to the people to make sure that they are convinced that the Federal Reserve is attempting to get to a 2% target, even though that's not really what they're doing. They want to maintain persistently high inflation with the idea that they're going to 2%. They don't want to actually achieve 2%. They want to be on a path of getting there. And that's it. Nowhere else do they want to be on the path, and nowhere else do they want to be but on the path to get to 2%. Persistently high inflation, perfect. That's a consistent path to 2%. As long as it doesn't go too high, they're good. Because if it falls to 2%, they're screwed. It's not screwed if they get to 2%. They're screwed if they run into a recession while they're at a 2% inflation target, because they just don't have any downward adjustment to hit or to stimulate the economy without hitting the lower bound of zero. But again, because of the low R-star environment, it's only at 1.5%. If you drop the Fed funds rate because of the lack of inflation down to the lower bound of zero, there's no stimulating effect from that. It just doesn't work. Again, I'm the only one who seems to know that or talk about that other than the Fed itself. All right. Are we done here, guys? I don't know. All right. I just keep talking. I know. I keep saying I'm done. Public sentiment is easier to manipulate if everyone believes in the 2% target. You're absolutely right about that. Okay? And it's easier to manipulate when people believe that the inflation is going to be running persistently high with the Federal Reserve on a mission to get to 2% target. That is exactly where they want to be. Right? Persistently high inflation with them attempting to get to a 2% target and everybody knowing it. Maintain elevated current position in inflation expectation with locking in a 2% long-term target. That gives them the ability to talk about interest rate adjustments. What good is the CPI report if it doesn't reflect reality? I don't know. Do you use the CPI report? Like I mean, other than it comes out and the fact that it's elevated, outside of that, I'm not sure, like maybe like how much it moved from one month to the next, or one reading to the next, or 1 year to the next. Like, I'm not sure what it is that the actual number is going to do for you. Because it's essentially lies anyway, right? I mean, it's whatever they want to say it is. It's not, based on any kind of thing that was like, even the idea of inflation itself is not something that, like, okay, the Federal Reserve doesn't have a way of figuring out inflation. Like, even Warsh at the end of the press conference the other day, when they were like, "So what do we use?" And he was like, well, you should use the PCE. Right? You should use the personal consumption expenditures. Yeah, PCE, that's a good one." And they're like, "Well, do you use PCE?" And then you're like, "Yeah, among other things. You should use the PCE. Do you use the PCE, Warsh?" Yeah. Like, did you? I wish I had it right here. It was something not too far off from that. It was just like, he was like, "You use the PC. We use a lot of stuff, including the PC." Yeah, it was just like, what? So you're going to use something different from what you're telling us to use? You know? So, like, none of it really, like, to me, again, it's just like, it ends up coming down to the arbitrary numbers in which that they say it is, so that we can, like, then we can then interpret that for whatever reality we want it to be. But ultimately, we have to figure out what it is that they're going to do with that information for their monetary policy, and that's about it. Like, I mean, an individual could say, "That's wrong, that's not right, that's, like, it should be something completely different." And I'm like, yeah, it maybe should be, but what it should be, could be, and ought to be isn't what they say it is. And it's doesn't matter compared to what it is that they plan on doing with their monetary policy anyway. Right? It's just a psychology, pretty much. Milk the cow, all they'll want to do. Huh. Currently, Circle's USDC is circulating at 77 billion, and it needs to be backed by US bonds. There are other stable coins coming into the space that will be competitors to US bonds. All right. I go by what goes around me every day. Prices going up. I don't care about perceptions or expectations. I live the daily grind. Wage earner, right? Don't get me wrong, Jay Pedro, right? I totally get it, man. I mean, I feel the pain, I feel the suffering, I feel the idea along with it, and I know that that's a wage earner thought. And I'm not being offensive or mean or anything else, because again, this is two tiers that we're looking at. Right? And that's literally that's describing a wage earner position. And I know, right? I mean, I know it takes one to know one, right? So I'm not trying to be mean or offensive. The only thing that will hold on, I love Moses's question. Do you think the only thing that will unite humanity is an alien invasion? Yeah. Like, I mean, for all of humanity, if it was an alien invasion, I think that might do it. If it was real, if it was credible, a real credible threat like that, alien invasion. I mean, it practically almost did it with COVID. Ah, damn it, I'm out of coffee. All right, humanity has 30 months left. What? I really don't think they care what we think, actually. None of this is really real. All right. You're invited to the school community. Don't tell them I invited you, though. All right. You guys are awesome. We're going to, I don't know, tomorrow we're probably going to end up breaking down what I think is the neo-Fisherism view within that article that we posted in the description of this video. That's really where the depth of this article pretty much, the video that I put out here talking about how it is that I called this out 3 years ago, it's really like it's kind of old news. And really, if it's new to you, like I totally get it. Like when the new information comes in, it feels brand new. But ultimately, this is something that has been going on for quite some time. And really the deeper information that really needs to be talked about now is how it is that inflation is going to start becoming a permanent feature within the economy due to the elevated nominal interest rates being so persistent within the economy for a significant amount of time. That is going to be like the real power play that's going to start taking place, and that very few people are going to recognize it, because as the Federal Reserve threatens to raise the nominal interest rates, it's only going to threaten to raise inflation even higher because of the neo-fisherism. If that's difficult to understand, that's the conversation we're going to have tomorrow over at the UE University. So again, there's a link down in the description. $20 a month, you'll have access to the credible threat theory that you get to keep, right? Like you get to take the speeches and hand them out to your friends and study them as much as you want, or whatever you want to do with it, because that information is essentially free out there for anybody to have. But then the real gold is to come in and have the conversation, right? So once you have internalized the credible threat theory and you're looking to figure out how it is that you position yourself accordingly for that, that's where the conversation starts to come in, because then you can get the aha moments that, fill in the blanks, though, all those spots that you've been looking for. That's where it starts to happen, is during those conversations. They're the best. It's the high quality stuff. That's all I can say. All right. I'm going to jet. You guys are awesome. Links are in the description. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.